That's fine.
Hey Shane, how you going?
Good, very well. How are you?
I'm good, I'm good. It's exciting to see you.
I know. This is I think I've done 2 video calls today, and I've normally got a screen full of multiple heads all looking at me. So this is quite fun, just having almost like a one-on-one chat.
And I can't believe that it takes a lockdown for us to actually chat.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. It's pretty it's been a long time in between drinks, but hey, better now than never, huh?
I know, exactly. I was like, you know what? I'm going to start doing these live sessions. I want to get some people on here that who I adore. I don't get to see very often, but have really inspired me along my career journey in some way, shape, or form. And you're definitely one of those people. And I just want to say thank you for your time and sitting down and having a chat today.
Oh no, it's nice. It's just you and I, isn't it? I'm pretty sure that's
it. Just you and me, baby. Just you and me.
I know.
Hey, do you like my back screen?
It's very cool. I've seen that you've changed it up daily. The ones that are some of the interviews I've seen you do, I've seen that you change up daily. I'm not sure who your interior decorator is, or you're just handy with the Photoshop, maybe.
I do it. I do these.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm a bit
well
clever.
done.
See, I've evolved.
Yeah, well, I really haven't prepared much. I can't. Sorry about that.
At least you got your polo cushion. That looks pretty cool.
I know. That's all the wife, right?
Speaking of, how is Jess?
Yeah, she's good. She's good. Yeah.
And Harper?
Yeah, she's good. Teacher and student. Check.
Oh my goodness. I just give her a pat on the back. I don't know that I'd be able to. I tell you what, they say God gives you what you can handle. And I'm telling you, thank goodness my kids are all grown up, because there is no way I could have homeschooled.
No, listen, it is challenging. I guess as an adult who's, put all that well past them, it is interesting to go back and sort of work through it. Even now, I'd like to just understand how they learn. Like, they don't just go to get an assignment and go to a library or pull out an encyclopedia and look up stuff. Like, they've got a whole internet, and the information just comes to them so differently, which is probably good and bad.
It is. I remember when we were younger and we got a school assignment. I don't know if you're a bit younger than what I am, but we used to go to the news agency and buy these
the project things.
These project fold out big pieces of paper that we used to cut up and paste in. And
I can't imagine how many of us probably had the same kind of work if we all did the same thing. But now to go through the internet and I guess and to filter through the information to give the teachers what they want without even sounding like, in my case, something that sounds far beyond a 9-year-old's intellect. And even this morning I was looking at some of her work, and I'm just like, you're not just cutting and pasting. Like, if I asked you a question, would you be able to explain it to me? Like, that's what I would expect, that they have some understanding of all the bits and pieces that they collate together. But it works, and I think it's going to bring up a very different kind of child. I think it's going to bring in definitely a different kind of person into the workforce in a few years' time as well. Just the stuff that they do that's so different to how we do it.
And just explain that to me a little bit.
Oh, it's just like I think they're so tech savvy. They've got so much information at their fingertips. I guess now more and more I start to interview younger people. Now I'm getting into that category where I'm so much older. And they come in with a different skill set. You can't just look at their resume so much and go, okay, well, you can't look at all the things they haven't done, all the things that perhaps I might expect that they could have done. But throw them behind a desk, give them a computer, make them task orientated, and they go nuts. Where I guess the likes of myself and even yourself is we're very much hands-on, and then when things like computers and the internet that become prolific, we then had to go sort of orchestrate how to turn those things into processes and document them and all that kind of jazz. So they might not be necessarily operational and hands-on and all have that kind of experience that we all like to go, yeah, tick, 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 but, you know, give them a spreadsheet and a Word document, and they can go nuts, and they can probably, you know, do it 10 times quicker than I could, you know. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting, and I know, and it's only caught me out probably over the last 12 months, interviewing some staff for some roles and kind of going, once upon a time, I probably wouldn't have thought they were a good fit. But now you just look, okay, well, what do they bring to the table in other ways? So yeah, it's interesting, but yeah, I think very open-minded.
It is interesting, and the kids, you're absolutely right. I mean, the kids today, you give them a laptop, a computer, any sort of technology, and they know their way around it so well. And you know, one of the fortunate areas, because our, you know, food service or hospitality is such an operational, hands-on business. We don't have the luxury of sitting at home behind a computer. We've got to be constantly hustling and working and so forth. But is it something that you can teach the kids quite easily, that whole operational side?
I think you can expose them pretty quickly. You know, I think there'll always be the kind of kids, or particularly young people, who, you know, think they can shine through what they know. And at that time, what they know is all that they know, whether it's, you know, being literate on a computer and all the rest. But it's, I guess, the people who aren't afraid to get their hands dirty and, you know, get into it, who really sorts out, you know, the kind of work they're going to be. And I guess that's industry orientated. I guess that differs from industry to industry, but particularly in ours, you know, if you're all, you know, if the path you take is just to sort of sit behind the desk or be a lot more back of house orientated, then, you know, you're probably not gonna learn the overall scope of what the whole industry has to offer. You know, and it's hard to be critical about, you know, things that happen at the front of house if you don't understand it, because you've always been back of house. So I guess, you know, yeah, I mean, as long as they've got a willingness to, I guess, understand it and get their hands dirty and you know, be involved, then they'll get a lot more out of it wherever they want to go in this industry.
Which probably leads us in the segue. I mean, just like every time we catch up, it's like, and we kind of get ahead of where...
Because it's always so long in between each time. So it's like word long.
I know. And we have to make it shorter. You know, there's one thing coming out of this where the people that matter to you in your life, you have to keep them a little bit closer. So you and Jess are going to be a lot closer now to me. Good. But, you know, going into the segue, so Gema Catering, you've been there now a long time. What got you into cooking in the first place? And I don't want to go into the catering so much yet, as much as I want to understand your connection with food.
Yeah, well, I guess it's probably something I don't identify with. A lot of young people having so many choices and saying, oh, I don't know what I want to do, you know, going through high school or getting out of high school or choosing you know, a trade or a university degree. I always knew what I wanted to do. It never puzzled me. It was never, I don't know what I would have done if I wasn't good at it, or if I didn't like it, because I really didn't have a plan B or a plan C. It was just my tunnel vision and my focus of where I wanted to be. And, you know, as soon as I got as soon as I got in a position in the kitchen, I loved it. I don't know if it's just, I loved it because I felt I had no other choice. But I loved everything about it. I loved, you know, obviously the food and the theatre and the pressure
and the
of it.
Creativity and you're very creative.
Yeah. And I do. Yeah, and I love that as an outlet. But, you know, I guess when you're starting out, your creativity is the last thing on your mind. You're just trying to learn your craft and you know, hopefully somewhere down the track, you know, you can have the opportunity to have that input and that creativity into it. So, you know, I was very lucky. I always knew what I wanted to do very, very early on. And you know, I guess for me, it was all about, you know, how far could I get in it? Well, you know, where was it going to take me? Would I become a chef and then end up in sales or managing a hotel? But no, I've never been I've never been distracted or, from any of those other kind of paths I could have taken. This has always kind of been the lane for me. Even, through periods in my life or my working life where I haven't been as hands-on in the kitchen, it's always my motivation to, to get back and, be touching food and all the rest.
And when it comes to your food journey, and we'll probably fast forward a little bit and we'll go into the Gema business, if you like. I mean, just watching that business over the years, Shane, like, as a family business, you guys must be extraordinarily proud of what has been created. I mean, tell us a little bit about that. There's Matthew, Di, the girls, Paul, his family, like, you're all playing a role in creating this empire, if you like.
Yeah. Sorry, I got distracted there. I had an incoming call and it really lost my whole screen, actually. I've got you back now.
Oh, too busy, sorry.
So we're back live. Sorry, just go over that again. We're talking about Gema.
Yeah, just talk to us about Gema. Explain to us, Gema, from when I first was introduced to the Gema Group, was a function centre in Wentworthville that was doing weddings, and a lot of weddings and a lot of different events and so forth, to today where it's like this like beast. It's massive business. I mean, to think that you can do an event. What's the largest event you've ever done?
Probably the Formula One Grand Prix is getting up there. Back in its day, even, the Bathurst 1000, was still pushing, 11,500 corporates.
In one day?
No, across the weekend. So yeah, probably doing, 5,000-6,000. So in retrospect, I probably do things that are bigger than that now, but back in the day, that seemed big to me. We started, the function centers were, definitely, as you said, they were thriving function centers in particular areas and at particular price points where they were really busy. And just as the wedding market changed, they were more Western suburbs based. As the wedding market changed, and now even our best, your local sailing club, and everybody's got water views, and obviously that's where bride and grooms gravitate towards in terms of location. So it was just it was just sort of they were sort of something that sort of probably tapered off, and they tapered off also because our focus become a lot more. We got more heavily involved with football stadiums. One football stadium led to another one. Somebody else
Floriade, like you guys started with Floriade as well.
Yeah. So yeah, and Floriade was a really big event. We held that for 12 years. Absolutely killer event. That went for 30 days. And kudos to us because it was really hard to break into that ground in Canberra. It was all sewn up by some of the usual suspects. So, a challenging space to get into. And, now we have, two venues down there, obviously being Manuka Oval and Canberra Stadium. So, I mean, and I guess just the next level for us was, major, they were all venues, whether it's a function center or a stadium or a sporting complex. They're all fixed venues. So, the next step for us was, to do greenfield sites, these large scale events that are building them from the ground. You bump in, you build all the infrastructure, the show happens, then you bump out and move on to the next one. And that really has probably become a real niche for us, and, something that we've carved out for ourselves. There are a few other companies that do it and do it well, albeit, possibly within, their own state or their own region. We're got very good at doing it all across the country.
Yeah.
We go to Darwin, we go to Townsville, we do things in Tasmania. And on top of, all the motorsports events, there's the PGAs, there's, the tennis, and probably countless other things that I can't even run off right now. But yes,
you guys are kind of like have really morphed into that major events business. You know, you've gone from a function center now to pretty much taking on that entire catering world.
Yeah.
And I guess that's why last year when the announcement was made, I think it was like March.
Yeah.
What was the date of the Grand Prix last year?
That's
okay. You don't have to remember. I'm sure it was a very stressful time. But I'll never forget, I was sitting in the lounge room, I was listening to the news, and I heard the news that the Grand Prix was going to be cancelled. And I'm like, WTF, there's no way that they would cancel the Grand Prix. Like, it was just something that you just couldn't even get your head around. And I'm thinking, what's going to happen with Gema? Like, it was literally days, right? Like, it was.
Yeah. No, that was a Friday. So, I mean, it's a 4-day event. Technically, we'd already traded, albeit a fairly quiet day on the Thursday. So, you know, obviously, as the weekend escalates, you know, Friday's busier, then Saturday and Sunday are busier again. And not forgetting, you know, just at that specific event, you know, we don't just look after the corporate, we run all the retail. So, you know, that's looking after all the retail bars across the site, all the food trucks that are or, you know, pop-up restaurants that are in place. That whole site was ours. I mean, that Saturday night, we had a Miley Cyrus concert planned. That Sunday night, we had a Robbie Williams concert planned. So, you know, you can understand that by Friday, the day of the event, our weekend was set up. I mean, I think by Friday morning, I was already starting to prepare food for Sunday service. So, you know, there's no sort of flicking a switch and going, how can I undo all of this? And yeah, I mean, we had corporate staff at the doors of corporate suites with drinks on trays, ready to welcome our first lot of guests when the news come through. So, you know, it's soul destroying. You know, it's the effort on the ground from the whole team, but it's the months of planning. It's, you know, it's working with the stakeholders.
It's actually years of planning, right? I mean, it's not just months; like, it's years of planning.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal amount. I mean, you know, and yeah, obviously there's a huge financial cost to it all. But then, you know, even from just the sheer amount of energy, you know, from all the staff, you know, 2 weeks prior to that, we've just come out of, you know, done the Adelaide 500, which is a massive event in itself. That's probably a 10,000 person corporate event, again, that we run all the bars, the concerts and that for. So, you know, not that, you know, we have different teams do different things, but, you know, there's a lot of energy that goes into one event. 2 weeks later, we didn't even come home. We're already in another state, ready to go there. So, you know, it takes its toll on people as well, mentally. And, you know, it's a bit of an empty feeling. It really is.
Oh, look, I'm not even involved in it. I'm just like get a lump in my throat just thinking about it. I mean, it was just shocking. It was absolutely shocking to think that our industry could go to that point, and that businesses like yours and the suppliers behind the business and your employees and all of the team that are there. I mean, it must have just been like, I don't even have words like you would. But what did you do? You know, like, how did you pick yourself up from that point?
Well, I mean, really, that was just, I mean, that day there was the catalyst for all, you know, events, big and small. The Formula One Grand Prix really set the precedent across the whole country, you know, made the AFL, the NRL, the cricket, everyone think about their position on major sporting events, because if this is what, you know, an international sporting body can do. So, I mean, for us, it was really just a domino effect after that. You know, it was, you know, trying to consolidate and get out of Melbourne. You know, even at that stage, they were starting to talk about what was going to happen with flights and back to Sydney. And, you know, at that time, Sydney was pretty much unaffected. It was all kind of focused on Melbourne. So how are we ever going to get people back to where they live? So it was really just sort of getting out of there, consolidating what we could, and then getting back to Sydney. And then it was pretty much just that domino effect. The NRL, you know, sort of put a hold on everything until they come up with a plan for a bubble. The AFL, they all did a similar thing. So, you know, I guess after that, we were just really, like everyone else, at the mercy of, you know, when they created a bubble, or, you know, when they, you know, health advice allowed all those things to sort of start taking place. whether it was in a small format or a larger format. So how do we pick ourselves up? Well, it was a grind. It was a grind. It affects everyone on so many levels. It's the people that supplied. It's us that supplied the event. The suppliers that supplied to us to allow us to do the event. It's the staff involved. It's trying to navigate our way through something that none of us probably ever expected. Do it without any kind of handbook, any kind of manual. Try and keep as many people as we can happy and on board. And it hasn't worked out great for everyone. But it's just been a minefield. But a year on, we're still here. The NRL was able to go out, to continue last year quite well in a bit of a bubble. We snuck in some supercars events in there. And I guess up until recently, these last few weeks, we really kind of thought, everything that had been postponed from the beginning of the year was looking like it was, going to be slotted in for the back end of the year. And it was, really, it was going to look hectic, don't get me wrong. But, it was starting
hectic you can handle though, right? I mean, you run on hectic.
Hectic we can do in spades,
Yeah.
We've all learned that it's much better than the alternative. But now with this, with this latest sort of, series of lockdowns, it's we're back at the mercy of, a government trying its best, and, us sort of playing our part in it, and then telling us, when these events can happen. I guess the other thing that affects a lot of what we do is the international element. It's the players, the tennis players that come over from overseas, the Formula One drivers, the golfers. So it's all a bit up in the air, but we'll keep plowing through it, and hopefully see some things come to light, and early on next year, if not the back end of this year, that we can sink our teeth into.
So in terms of putting all your eggs in the one basket, so to speak, how has Gema pivoted? Like, what have you done where you've now looked at your business, and have you changed anything? Are you going in a slightly different direction, or are you still committed to that one space?
Well, listen, the two spaces we work in are predominantly events, and obviously, the aviation arm of our business. Could you have picked any two better for this kind of scenario? Probably not. We've got, had some good strategy in place that has, seen us to get through to this far. And now looking at what, the next 3, 4, 5 months need to look like as well. So I don't think we were trying, to change any kind of, strategy. We've certainly looked at, many options, that some of the usual suspects have. And, where you've seen other companies that have really been able to thrive, whether it's in, the takeaway space or home delivery in that, we've looked at a lot of those options, even quarantines and that as well. But, I guess a lot of those, haven't really come to fruition, obviously because we saw a back end of this year still looking quite good for us, up until more recently. So, we've got some things that we're definitely working on in the background. I'll certainly keep me behind a desk for the next month or two, trying to put some things into place, and it will be moving into some areas that we haven't, yet gone to. We have, just in a different capacity. So, they won't be so focused essentially on events or other things. So, we'll just sort of wait and see what comes of them, but they're promising, and hopefully all of those things have some longevity in them as well, should this continue to happen.
Well, considering you've gone through hell in the last 18 months, my friend, you're still looking very fit and healthy and clean cut. So
well, I don't know how my dog can get to a perimeter, but I can't.
Than a world pandemic to knock you back a peg or two.
Yeah. Listen,
I was expecting you to be a little bit bold. I was expecting you to be a little bit grayer or something.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely grey. listen, it's, I'm probably better now than I was 12 months ago. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because, we've all seen what happened and, we're sort of this time around a bit more eyes wide open. But, 12 months ago, I was, much the same as, a lot of other people, not completely optimistic, just grinding to get through. And, with the hand that's been dealt, but, I'm certainly a lot more optimistic and upbeat about it, this time around.
So going to a bit of a personal side, how has your mental health been? What have you done to keep that in check? And I know that Jess is extraordinarily supportive and your family and all the rest of it, but have you had to lean into any other areas?
Oh, listen, I have. I've definitely had, probably a turbulent, year, last year, probably more specifically. And then, I probably had even before that, I had a good run for a couple of years. And before that, I used to have a very bad hip until I had that hip replacement. And, I really struggled, and I probably didn't get the gravity of how much I struggled until I had that fixed, to realize just how bad mentally I was, just from, the pain and just faking it till I made it kind of thing.
And like, to be fair, were you born with that hip condition that had gradually deteriorated? How did you do that?
No, it was just something that happened when I was a teenager.
Okay.
Really, I've never really gotten to the bottom of it. It was just a bacteria that found its way into my bloodstream, and
okay. And I mean, you used to walk like, considering how just the amount of pain and how uncomfortable, you just learnt to live with it, right? And you just got on with it. And when you said to me that you were having a hip replacement, I was like, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And how old were you? You were like pretty young when you had the hip replacement done.
Yeah. I think I was about 38. So yeah, it took a while for them to come around and actually give it to me. But it's just, life changing. I think I said earlier, there were times where I felt like I couldn't be heavily involved in the kitchen, and that was a big part of it. I didn't feel like, and all that weighs in on your mind as well. Like you just. You hear and you're going through the motions, but I wasn't the person who could ultimately execute a lot of what I was hoping to, because my body stopped me a lot. And and at some point that takes a toll on your headspace as well. And I didn't get that. I didn't get that until I went and got fixed. And then, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but, just realized, just how much pain and, the kind of person probably that I know I was. I wasn't a great person, and so.
Well, you must have actually hidden that pretty well, because I always thought you were pretty awesome.
Well, you
were never like a very moody. We never, when I saw you, ever were a moody ship or anything.
No, I'm sure I have my moments, like all of us. So yeah, like I said, even last year, and it was really, I think, I think as humans, we all like either to problem solve or have some certainty of some of the outcomes in our life. And I guess last year when this pandemic hit, and I didn't think it was bullshit. But I just thought that we wouldn't be, I honestly did not think we were going to be affected by it until the Friday they shut down that Grand Prix.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
Yeah, and then it hit me like a ton of bricks. And then, we were so busy just getting out of Melbourne, and then, then getting back to Sydney, and, you start to, you look at, okay, you're starting to look at, okay, what the mess we've got, okay, what options do we have? How's the government helping out? Where is that going to position our staff, who, as you would know, we're a family business. We've got staff that have been extremely loyal to us, for so long. They are like our family. So, it's it weighs heavily. Whether you're close to it or not, you know, you're still impacted about how these people are impacted. So yeah, it wasn't a great space for me last year, and I think this time around I'm a little bit better. Like, you know, I'm a little bit more accepting of, you know, I can't control everything. These aren't my outcomes.
That must be hard though, because that must be hard. I don't mean to interrupt you, but it must be quite difficult when you are a little bit of a control freak.
Yeah, a little bit of a perfectionist. Yeah, definitely some inner searching has taught me that. And you know what, I've always been, I guess, yeah, a perfectionist. I've probably been very guarded and very rigid, you know, to make anything mine, or like you say, have that control, you know, and particularly from a work point of view as well. You know, I always say that the hardest bit of my job is the 12 other people telling me how to do it. So, you know, I always have been a bit rigid, and you know, it's going to be, you know, everyone's got a great idea or a great opinion, but at the end of the day, this is how I want things done, and you know, so I can control the outcomes ultimately. So I don't know if it's just, you know, maybe getting a little bit older, not being in as much pain as I once was, and you know, and a pandemic is, you know, and some self-reflection. You know, I'm not in control of everything. I can't be controlled. I can't be responsible for everything. Therefore, I can't, you know, be anxious about wanting to control it. You know, I can't change the things that have happened in the past either. So, you know, I can't get myself depressed about the things I can't change. Like it's really much sort of about being like, you know, here and now, in today, tomorrow.
And do you have like a support outlet that, you know, do you have any groups that you're mingling with?
Yeah, I do. I get together with a group, and yeah, and we, yeah, without.
And it makes you realise that your problems are really not that bad anymore.
Well, you know what, you're right. There is a little bit of that, but you know what? Sometimes it's just, you know what? It's really good to hear other people's stories. You know what they've been through, their take on life, and you know, for me, I'm just grateful that, you know, I'm grateful that I got, you know, supportive family. I'm grateful, you know, that I've got a supportive wife, that, you know, that they've all seen me probably at my worst, and you know, probably won't be the last time I'm down there. But you know, I'm also glad that I didn't need to get to 65 to sort of realize even things about myself that, you know, I didn't know 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It was all about me. It was me, my work, getting it done my way. But you know, now it's, you know, I actually, it's come full circle. I actually get a lot more, you know, joy out of seeing, you know, other people's success, whether, you know, they're my chefs or, you know, other staff we have, or, you know, what Jessica can achieve in her work life, or us as a business, us as a family.
You're actually adulting. You're adulting.
A what?
You're adulting.
What's that?
Becoming an adult.
Oh, right. Is that what they call it? No one put that on a birthday card. Yeah, you're probably right. You're probably right. I'm playing an older person's game now. Yeah.
It's just, I think it's just part of the journey, and it's wonderful that you've got that sort of insight into it, though, that you're able to put yourself now into almost like that that leader, and become more of that leader as opposed to more inner focused.
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying you ever were. I'm just, you're the one that just said it.
No. I do. I get what you're saying. I probably think I've always, you know, ego aside, been a leader. But you know, probably been a leader in a different way, probably a less understanding and, you know, compassionate way. You know, God knows I still get angry. But you know what? I've also learned that you're allowed to be angry. you know.
You're only human. I mean,
Well,
God, you're not Superman.
well, you know, it's funny. Nobody ever comes up to me and says, "Oh, you know, Shane, why are you so happy?" But you know, I can tell you if I'm losing my shit somewhere, everybody comes up and goes, "Why are you so angry?" But you know, but it's probably taken me a long time to realize, you know what, as long as I'm angry for the right reasons, I'm allowed to be angry. I'm allowed to. I'm allowed to sit with that as well.
And you are a bit of an emotional person, so far as you are kind of very in tune with your emotions too, aren't you? Really?
Well, you know what, I thought I was until you go to a darker place, and then I think, well, maybe I wasn't. You know, maybe I didn't understand myself quite as well as I thought I was, or you know, or I was just trying to be, you know, not as authentic as I could have been. You know, what did everyone else want to see? You know, everyone wants to see Shane happy. Everyone wants to see that. And you know, you probably over a period of time, or me over a period of time, did lose some authenticity. And you know, I think being in a better headspace, probably being a little bit older and a little bit wiser too, you know, sort of, you know, in the time to reflect on that, you know, and, you know, now seeing other things through other people's eyes, whether it's, you know, people that I work closely with, or, you know, even my own children, you know, it just, yeah, you reflect on it differently. But I thought I had it sorted till I didn't.
But it's good that you've at least acknowledged it, and you've done something about it, and you've had this like epiphany. And you know, it'll be interesting to see now how your life changes going forward.
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't think I'm about to set out and write any books anytime soon. But
well, that's a shame, because I'd buy your book if you really write one. Now, speaking of books, you know, one of the things that you definitely, Adam Moore likes to take credit for this, but it was actually you were the one that inspired my cookery book obsession that I have. And when I used to go and visit you when I was on doing sales, and we'd sit down and like, you made me look at books in a whole different light. You're like, oh, have you seen this recipe? And we'd go have a look at it. It was almost like we had to put gloves on to look at your books.
Yeah. I know that. Yeah, they're all my children in many ways. And I think I don't know. I think possibly I was just, we were on the cusp of, you know, possibly the internet hadn't exploded, and a lot of different things. And you know, I also got to a bit of a stage where, you know, I felt like for a while there, and particularly, you know, even after I started even when I started at Gema to a degree, like I stopped being under the wing of anyone else. You know, somebody to teach me, somebody to show me. So a lot of it was just a lot about, you know, self-education, you know, sort of working out what I wanted to do, and you know, because I just stopped having, I felt like I stopped having, you know, that explosion of other influences, you know, at the time. And I just, you know, I love books. You know, I don't often have the amount of time that I'd love to sit down and dissect them. You know, often people give them to me as Christmas presents, and a year later they've still got the plastic on them. With any luck, none of them are listening to this.
I was going to say, I'm out.
Yeah, but I do. I very rarely look at a recipe in a cookbook, or even now online, and just, you know, I never love something just as it is. I often go to the back of a book where, you know, it might be like Neil Perry's, you know, rock pool or whatever. And, you know, it might be quite obscure, but, you know, it's his tomato jam. You know, I'll often go to, you know, the glossary, you know, where, you know, they all make their own mayonnaises and, you know, dressings and all the rest. I'll often go there and, you know, go to the little hidden gems and pick out things from there and learn things from there. You know, because that's never a part of the core recipe. It always tells you to refer to page 133 or whatever. And that's what I find I do. I go past all the pretty stuff and go straight to the back.
That's funny, isn't it?
Mm.
So that was one of the things that you inspired me. And the other one was, funnily enough, you inspired me to be a better parent.
Right.
Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
It always amazed me, you know, like a lot of people do go through separation and they go through their life changes. You know, we all grow up, we all change, and for some of us our relationships don't last, and you know, they fall apart. And you had been married to Fiona, and you have two beautiful children. You got Aiden and Charlotte.
Yeah.
And I always was just so I just lived in admiration of the fact that, you know, when you and Jess met and you started to form your own little family, etc., how much you brought Fiona into your fold and the way that you were still this really strong family. It's almost like this expectation that when we separate from a spouse that we've got to hate each other. And you made me sort of sit back and just go, you know what? I actually don't hate you, and I'm going to co-parent a lot better. And I started to be a lot nicer.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, I think, you know, everybody's individual cases are probably so vastly different. You know, I'm very, very lucky, you know, with Fiona. I'm, you know, equally lucky, you know, with Jessica to be so welcoming of, you know, what Fiona and I had, and obviously two children. You know, the alternative is, you know, to lead, I guess, separate lives and, you know, not be involved or, you know, partially involved and, you know, with animosity and, you know, whatever other carry on, you know, the point score and all the rest. So, you know, it is unique. You know,
it is, but it's just so much easier.
It is.
I mean, I ring you up on a Sunday and I'm like, oh, hey, Shane, what are you doing? And it's like, oh, yeah, I'm just over at Balmoral having fish and chips with Fiona, Jess, and the kids. And I'm like, oh, that's a normal Sunday, right?
Yeah. And listen, you know what? And I think the benefits of that, you know, are probably later on in life now as they're teenagers becoming adults as well. You know what? It's just not weird. It's not strange. You know, for either of my kids to, you know, to come from the Gold Coast down to Sydney and, you know, live here as if it's their own place. It's not awkward with Jessica, but you know, it's not awkward for Fiona to be here and you know, to be part of that either. So yeah, we're really blessed. You know, I'm glad, you know, that you looked at that and saw that as a benefit.
Can I tell you, it actually, and I'm not even just saying that just to, you know, because we're talking here today, but it really did change the way that I looked at separation. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to give this a try. And it just made life so much easier just to have peace, you know, just to be like, well, you know, my kids would have a 21st and they can have both parents there with their you know, with their partners. And it wasn't awkward. It was really natural.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. You know, even Jessica's extended family, you know, like, you know, Fiona's included in everything. Like, you know, if she's here and she's in Sydney, you know, everybody's just so welcoming. It's not fake. It's not put on for the sake of the occasion. Yeah, it's very genuine. You know them, and it's very real. And yeah, I mean, like I said, you know, just lucky. And you know, going back to earlier, you know, when I was just saying, you know, it's so great, you know, hearing other people's stories sometimes for perspective and, oh shit, I didn't think of that. You know, it's, you know, you're an example of that. You know, you took something away from it and, you know, were able to use it in your own life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just, we just don't ever think to, I actually don't even know because I'm not a psychologist, but I just know that it was a change in my life, and the inspiration was from what you and Jess and the way that you Jess and Fiona were interacting, and I just thought it was amazing. And kudos to you both, to the three of you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And how's Harper going? Gorgeous little Harper.
Yeah, she's good. You
Is
know,
she now, what is she? She's about 2 now?
no, yeah, 9 going on 19. Yeah, my independent little girl who, you know, knows everything about everything. But yeah, no, she's really good. I think like all the kids, they're probably itching for that social interaction back at school. You know, I think it's just to have that structure, that daily routine, no matter how much they love or hate school. It's, you know, it's a purpose to get your butt out of bed, make yourself look presentable, just like we do when we go to a job, I guess, day in, day out, and, you know, and turn up. And whatever the day holds for you, the day holds for you. But, you know, turning up is just the battle.
So talk to me about, we're going to get back into food now. We've kind of been deep. We're going to come back. We're going to start moving our way out.
Sure.
So talk to me about food and food trends, I suppose. When it comes to, like, I've always thought it was amazing the way that you can do a fine dining meal, and serve it to thousands of people. And the quality of the dish didn't really have a lot of sacrifice. Like it was still perfect.
Yeah.
And I've been at some of these events, so I do know. How do you do that? Like what?
Like, to be fair, probably a lot of trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I guess a lot of the time I'm one of those people that visualize what I want, and then probably have to understand and work back from there as to what my realities are. And when I say that, it's obviously being an event caterer. You know, it might be in a pop-up kitchen in the middle of a paddock, without all the mod cons around me, and you know, or you know, I've had some perfectly great ideas that work fine for 200 people. That all of a sudden I've tried to do it for 500 people. And as you can imagine, like doing that in a line or whatever to get it out is a lot more chaotic. So I've probably had many a chef curse me over my career for being too overzealous. But yeah, I guess, yeah, I always start with an idea or a concept and think, okay, well, how do I make that work on scale? You know, how do I get the best possible product on the plate without, as you say, like sacrificing it to the point where, you know, the customer's going to know. I might know that, you know, I couldn't put the foam on it to finish it off because, you know, that plate has to be carried 1 minute and 30 seconds by a staff member to get into the middle of that room. Or I might know that it's really windy outside and all these micro herbs are going to fly off as the plates are delivered. But, you know, it really is just kind of, you know, a bit of trial and error, and, you know, looking at almost on a case-by-case basis, in some cases with some events, you know, just because I might go and set up a large event, you know, I might have a production kitchen, but then I might have several satellite kitchens. So they aren't as well set up as the production kitchen. So it's still got to be achievable, and it's still got to get into a room, look like it's got plenty of fresh appeal, like it's just been done. And yeah, and sometimes that's a lot of sort of backwards thinking. There's the idea in my head. Sometimes it works. Sometimes I've got a lot of people telling me it can't work. But, you know, there's always a vision there. And, you know, if I can get to 90-95% of how I saw it in my head, then I'm happy.
You're happy, really?
Yeah.
Because it would come down to staff as well, because of the large events that you do. Do you have to use a lot of agency staff and a lot of casuals?
Yeah, I do use. I always have a core group of chefs with me.
Speaking of which, is Santino still with you?
He is. 20 odd years
how
now.
long has he been there for now?
21, 22.
Wow.
Not really sure. I probably should know that, but yeah, I think it's 21, 22.
And what about Shane and Dan? They still working with you?
Yeah. Shane's with us. Shane's still with us. Dan's one of my main casual guys. He'd probably be finished his stint in Japan now with the Olympics. But yeah, I have that core casual group that, you know, rely on us for work, but we rely heavily upon them as well, as if, they're one of our full-time chefs or anything else. So, and beyond that, yeah, there's always an overlay of, casual agency chefs that are probably more localized.
And how do you handle the whole, we're going through a massive skills shortage at the moment. Does that put a lot more pressure on you when it comes to getting these, to making these dishes where they're actually, you don't have to be super skilled to be able to put them together?
Oh, listen, it's an ongoing challenge, isn't it? Yeah, it's an ongoing challenge, and like I say, I guess, as I was saying, whenever I try and think of a dish or what I can do and how I can execute it, even with all the best equipment in the world, it's still, the bodies and the talent on the ground, to be able to put it together, or have some understanding of what I'm trying to do, to make it all happen. So that does play a part in it, as much the same as how good is my oven, how good is my chef. But it hasn't hit me yet, because I don't think our events have been on the scale that they once were. But definitely, from what I hear and talking to a lot of industry people, the amount of people leaving, and everything else, it will become an issue. Will it change my mindset and try and dumb down food? No. Because at the end of the day, the people that we're trying to impress are, a customer. They don't care about the challenges I'm facing back in the kitchen. So the idea will still be able to reach for the stars, and how we overcome those obstacles is, we'll have to play it by ear, I guess.
And we've got the beauty now as well, where we've got an amazing supply chain that that aren't just doing products in bags anymore, like that whole mentality of opening a bag so it's very different today. I mean, it's comforting to know that if you are doing large scale production, you can create the element, pass it over, and have the same thing replicated, right?
Absolutely.
If you had to.
Absolutely. And I mean, I lean on suppliers for different things. I'll go out to suppliers who, I'll develop recipes for, and, they will make it to my spec, and we'll do the whole back and forth, and are you happy with this? And, until we get it right, which is a really good tool to have, particularly with large scale event catering, and transportation all around the country. There's obviously logistical challenges with getting food out of Melbourne into Darwin. And often when I have these people who prepare the food, who can prepare certain elements of the food for me, they take that on board of how we're going to get it there and all the rest. So, it's definitely a lot better than it was 10 years ago, in terms of, what people are producing. And it's, it's not just mass produced, it's very bespoke. We are doing this specifically for Gema. Nobody else is going to see it. And, there is, whether I've got skilled labor or unskilled labor, it's still a very good tool to have. Yeah.
It provides that peace of mind, I think, and it still allows for that consistency piece. Plus, when you're managing food costs, you know what it's going to be costing you.
Absolutely. And as you would know, whether we're in the middle of a bushfire or the middle of a drought, the fluctuations, and very often after the fact, when I sit down and dissect the money that I've spent on an event, sometimes I'm very surprised, but at both ends of the spectrum. Either it's cost me so much more than something I did a month ago, or it's cost me stupidly less than I expected, which I'm not going to complain about. But, I haven't really found a consistency or a middle ground as to why that's happening either. And that's with a balance of using, product that's cooked for me or prepared to my spec, or, dealing with raw ingredients. So it's a bit of a funny one. So, when somebody asks me, Shane, how much are we going to spend on food at Formula One Grand Prix? In my mind, I think I know, but there's always that, oh shit, it's either a couple of dollars this way or a couple of dollars that way. And, you know, when you're doing that for 10,000
But when
people,
you're doing that on that sort of scale, like
Yeah.
it's not just like a few dollars this way and a
Oh,
few dollars
yeah.
that way.
yeah, it's yeah. They're not always nice conversations I have with myself, Vanessa.
You actually then answer yourself, or you just take the time to ask yourself, you talk to yourself?
Oh, no, I probably answer myself, you know.
Your Auntie Lynn said to say hi. She said, great work, fantastic work, Shane.
Awesome. Hi, Lynn.
Auntie Lynn. And I think, Bruce Krebs, your dad.
Yeah.
Oh, wasn't that nice? And
That would be
Melissa
my father.
Martin and Barry Chef Jay, he said he worked with you at Liquid Molly event a few years back.
Nice.
Craig Madeley says hi.
Hi, Craig.
Craig's going to be on next week, actually.
Oh, is he? Bless him. I'll tune in for that one, Craig. Catch
Well,
up.
anyway, what can I say, my friend? It's been an absolute pleasure. What do you think is going to be some of the trends coming as we start to come into this recovery, taking into account that we're going to go into summer and sort of Christmas? What do you think's going to be on trend?
That is really hard, because at the moment we're just trying to establish what kind of style of service we can have.
Do you think it'll be a lot more towards that whole championing local produce?
Oh, without question. Without question. Obviously, we deal with a lot of, you know, different stakeholders when we go from state to state. You know.
Oh, Aiden just said hello.
Oh, stop it. I was going to say, why aren't you in school? But that's right. Don't go to school anymore.
No, he's an apprentice now.
No, that's right. That's right. You know, you're exactly right. Wherever we go, there's a lot of, there is, and rightly so, there's a lot of local government and state government pressure. You know, in the case of, you know, when we had the bushfires, you know, how are we helping, you know, to promote, you know, bushfire stricken areas or flood stricken areas. And now, I mean, had Formula One gone ahead this year, they had their own sort of real drive to use local suppliers. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. So there was there was an initiative there where I would have, you know, tried to use a lot of stuff and package it up in hampers, sort of a bit of a click and collect. So yeah, you're exactly right. Everything we work on now, even outside of pandemics, is very much, you know, how is it driving money back into the local economy, with employment, with the food. Everyone loves to tell a good story, particularly governments, when the time is right, why it costs so much to put on an event. So it's a very big part, you know, that sustainability and all that jazz is a very big part of, you know, all things we tender on.
And when we get together, this is what happens. We just can't stop talking. And I just want to ask you one last question, and it's probably a big question.
Wow.
See how we go.
Drum roll.
Allergens. How do you manage allergens when you're doing massive scale events? Do people are actually letting you know beforehand, or
that is the predicament we face. You know, pre-event, I go and order food for thousands and thousands of people. Yes, you know, it is a natural assumption to assume a percentage of them are going to be gluten-free, lactose-free, nut-free, the whole spectrum. So you do allow for that. I guess where the challenges that come up on a massive event side is, you know, just because I have that product on site and that person is unannounced and they're 3 kilometers away in another area or another kitchen, you know, it becomes very much ad hoc. Or the most often the one we get is, you know, the person that turns up on the first day of a 3-day event, and they announce themselves. So, you know, you've got to go out then and purchase, you know, 3 days worth of food that covers, you know, something that's on arrival, morning tea, lunch, you know, and you know what? They've parted with good money, just like the person next to them, just because they've got a dietary requirement.
I'm so proud to hear you say that. That makes me so happy. You're absolutely right. You know, they're paying customers and they want what they want.
Yeah. Listen, is it painless? No. You know, and strangely enough, I don't know how it happens, but you know, I'll get dietary requirements where they've been at an event I've done a month ago, and then they turn up at another event in another part of the country. And if they ask what's on the menu, I'm giving them the same thing. I don't expect that it's the same dietary requirement following me around the country. But yeah, definitely I guess, when they walk into a restaurant, they have an expectation. When they come out on site, know that they're partnered with good money. And I probably like to think that, we have an element of people these days that, might come to a Formula One or any kind of sporting event, and there is a genuine entertainment value. But, I do like to think that, we are putting food up there as, an equal reason to come out to these events, whether it's showcasing, first of all, what we do, second of all, local produce, and just, a higher level of catering that, is not usually associated with a lot of these things.
So Gema Group is not just a caterer, they're a family.
Or a family.
They're
A loving family.
Well, my friend, lots of love.
Lots of love.
It's been so good. It's been so much fun.
I know. Thanks for the one-on-one chat. It's been on
like
a Friday afternoon. What else would you rather be doing?
I feel like we've been all around the world. I think I need to go and have a Bex and lay down.
Yeah. Go have a wine time. It must be wine time there.
It is somewhere. That'll
Yeah.
do. All right.
Bye, lovely.
Much
all the
love.
best. I wish you all the best, and we'll stay in touch.
As if we couldn't.
I know.
All right. Give a big hug to the family.
I will. Love you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.